It is so easy to grow a property management company from 0 to 500. It's hard to grow a property management company from 1,000 to 2,000. You have to say no in real estate. You have to focus on what you're really good at. The reality is people will pay if they get better service. If you're looking as real estate as a part of your portfolio to invest, I think there's tons of good buys out there because time cures all. Even if you make a mistake, time cures it all. It does.
Hold it.
Just hold it.
Welcome back to the Roots Podcast. Today we have on Jeremy Tallman. Jeremy is the founder and owner of T&H Realty and Property Management, which manages over 1,300 doors in Indianapolis. Jeremy is also a very successful real estate investor. He currently has a portfolio of around 50 doors in Indianapolis. He has his own podcast, which is very popular. It's the BRRRR podcast. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate guys having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks for kicking things off, Tyler. That was much smoother than
my radio voice is finally finding it.
Once we're on episode 100, it's going to be the flow state. Jeremy, take me back to the sheriff sale days. I want to hear, there's the way that you are able to purchase doors and acquire properties is so far different than how somebody can get started today. But what I like is how it, the story that I want to hear is how you found the niche spot to go into and scaled from there.
So yeah, sheriff's sale, that's those were the fun days, honestly, in real estate for us. I think Scott would agree with that. He's my business partner. And we think we started sheriff's sale around 2002. So we bought our first rental in 2000. And then we said, we want to make a full-time deal of real estate. Like we can't be full-time single family landlords. We did the math. We thought we could do it. And it quickly learned as we started acquiring rentals that we could not become full-time real estate people by owning just rentals. So
just by being an investor.
Just by being an investor, right. It's just the cash flow was not there. It's a myth, that you think you buy 10 houses that cash flow $400 a month and you have $4,000 a month in income. You don't.
So
right?
I can't watch one Bigger Pockets episode and read 2 books and buy a property and
That's
quit my
right.
job.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. So we learned about sheriff's sale. It wasn't like a big mystery, but it was intimidating because you had to have cash. And as 25, 27-year-old guys, to come to sheriff's sale with several $100,000 is what you really need to be impactful down there. It was hard. So we found a local bank that took a gamble on us. And we attended a sale and bought a house. It was in South Broad Ripple. And we quickly learned that we can do this and make good money doing it, and we can quit our W-2s.
Was that flipping?
Yeah, that's flipping. We had a term called wholesaling back then that's different than it is today. To us, wholesaling was basically we just bought it and immediately flipped it to another investor. We never touched it. That was our term of wholesaling. It's not really wholesaling as we know it today, but no, we did a lot of work as well. So we would buy them, fix them up, developed a ton of contractor relationships. And I remember many lunches working my W-2 job, going to job sites and checking status of properties. And I'm sure Scott would say the same thing. But flipping at sheriff's sale, as we were able to amass capital from a bank, we had some private money, but not anything crazy. We were able to buy several homes a month, and the idea was to sell them and for profits, and we mostly did.
What was your W-2?
The W-2 I had before I left, I called it T&H South, I was a financial analyst, basically a controller, which if people know me today, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Probably shouldn't have been given that kind of authority at a company called Stoops Freightliner, which still exists. The guy, Jeff Stoops, sold it for several years ago, but the name still exists. And so our business back then was we sold big Class 8 trucks. So the big semis, that back then sold for 6 figures. I'm sure they're a whole lot more than that today, but I was a financial analyst and I worked 5 days a week, and then I went 4, and then I went full time. And I think it was January 2004 is when we said, this is humming. So we were at that point, I guess, 2 years into flipping, and we said, we can do this. I don't need a the W-2 job was actually holding me back. And so I said, we can make more money if I'm in the field more with Scott, looking at homes and getting things bought. So
What did a typical deal look like at a high level, like purchase, reno, ARV?
So I would say a typical deal back then was buy it for 50, 25, sell it for $125 or $150. Just real quick. I mean, they weren't, we've made very high, we've paid as much as I think $850,000 at a house at sheriff sale. That was toward the end of our sheriff sale run. But that wasn't normal. We bought homes in the teens. We bought a lot of homes in the 20s, 40s, 50s. Because if you could buy in the 40s and 50s and just do that model, you could buy a few homes a month, and make decent money.
Mm-hmm.
So
at what point did the flipping biz did that train kind of pass and you're like, oh, we need to go into long-term rentals? Like, walk me through that transition.
So we were still buying long-term rentals.
Got it.
All right. So if I go back and look at the several hundred homes we did at sheriff sale, I could probably go and say, yeah, we should have kept that one. We should have kept that one. We should have kept that one.
Mm-hmm. Well, you drive yourself mad if you went and looked at all the properties. That's
right. But at the same time, people say, is flipping really investing? And it's a good question because it was basically replaced our W-2 income. Like we had to have that income to live. I had 2 small kids. And
it's like, is being an agent really investing? It's like,
yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You're running a service.
Yeah.
I think you're running a business versus investing in,
that's right.
in a lot of ways. But you're also holding the deeds and owning it. But you're running at a 60% ARV. Like everybody goes for the 75% rule now to be able to BRRRR is where that's the perfect number. Running at 60% with those numbers at $1.25 for 75.
No, they were
changed.
They were great margins. And then, we still continued to buy rental properties. I think we got up, to around 50. I think we still own around 45, 50, 45 doors or so. Most of those were bought between 2000 and 2005.
Is there any leverage on those?
Not much. I think most of those are paying off this year and then soon.
So how much cash flow does the entire portfolio make? Let's say every month.
Gosh.
Enough.
I don't know. I think it's around $45,000 a month or so. In gross rents. So, we have a property management company. So the management company manages them for us. Now, we're still involved with day to day, but it's not like we're just informed of things for the most part. New furnace, new AC, things like that. But we also have some contractors that we use that we pay through our company directly. What I mean that is T&H Properties owns those properties. Mm-hmm. So we do pay. So it's hard to get a good P&L from our property management company, but we have a P&L through our, Scott keeps our books through QuickBooks.
How, at what point did you realize that not only you should start a management company, but that you needed one? Was it just out of necessity?
No, we wanted a management company out of necessity for our own rentals.
Okay.
Now, that was, let's say, 2004 when we were really doing a pretty decent volume of flips. And we did interview several companies, but there were only like 3 or 4 names back then. There were very few companies that managed homes. And they were typically what we would call like a back office realtor that didn't want to do transactions. They can just do property management because it's easy. That was the
income. Yeah.
That was the generally how it worked.
Well, those people still exist, and a lot of them don't even, own a house themselves, but they're managing others from distance, which is wild to me.
Right.
We were talking last week at our Masterclass event, which that will be dated because it'll be posted in like March.
Yeah.
But you were telling me your average owner ratio, property to owner.
Yeah.
Being that I was dumbfounded. It was under 2 or right
That's
around
right.
2.
1.89.
1.89.
Yeah. So our average client owns 1.89 properties.
And that number to me is just like eye-opening to where the need becomes that it's like, let's do this internally. Where somebody is either at a place where, like, I'm full-time in real estate, obviously, as an agent, running the team and all those things. I don't see a need for a management company for myself because why wouldn't I have staff that can do it? Which I think is very different from, I forget the owner that it's like 2 properties is it. That's the management. Either what do you see most of that being? Is that next up buyers that don't sell their
Well,
house, or
it's just logistics.
okay?
So 74% of our clients don't live in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a logistical problem for
Solution.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can't be, we're the boots on the ground, literally. So that's why they hire us. Now, a lot of our clients too may own in multiple states and they just don't want to deal with it as
Doing
well.
out-of-state investing, just from where it's, I'm sure in the past few years, it's up. There's been an uptick for out-of-state investors.
Few is not accurate. It's been a lot of years.
Okay. That's
Like,
When did
so,
that
like-
started to change? Because I would assume in 2004 there was not many from California or New York. When did that started to change?
So it changed, and I don't know the date, but there's a famous video out there of Warren Buffett when he said, this is right after the housing crisis, so call it 2008, probably 2009, when he said, hey, to me, it could make a lot of sense to go out and buy a few 100,000 single family homes. And he was saying it because the money was cheap. You hedge inflation big time with that kind of interest rate. But then the famous line is, the problem is though the management, right? Because it's not like apartments where you've got 500 apartments in one spot. It's the management. It's hard. Well, literally right after that is when things changed, where we saw an influx of investors. To circle back, we saw the change at sheriff sale. That's where it first started. And I'll never forget when Scott called me and said, we didn't buy anything today. Because he would go to the sale, I would hang back and run numbers and send numbers down to sheriff sale through text. And that worked really well. And he called me and said, we didn't get anything. I was like, well, that's not good. And he's like, but there's some company down here that bought like 30 houses. And it was AH4R, America's Homes for Rent. So they came in and were buying dozens at sheriff sale and on open market. And then it all followed. So you had this mad rush. So institutions start, and then your Joe and Jill investors come in after that. So that's when we felt it.
Let me get your take on this. Do you think that the out-of-state capital is going to go down in the future, or is it just going to keep going up? Because right now is an interesting time in the market where the market's relatively cold on the buy side right now, but I think that's rate dependent. I think it will get hot again. Do you think it will be out-of-state investors or?
I think it'll be both. Obviously funds have slowed, or quit.
Just can't make the numbers work.
Yeah, they quit buying. I think they're going to get back in the game. I don't think it's going to be like it was in 2010 to 2015 and on up. I just don't think that there's so many homes they bought. And, I'll be honest, when they were buying, there were a group of investors that I was a part of that we said those guys are going to get crushed. Like they can't buy single families and make them work. What we had no idea of is the appreciation that our market was about to go through. So if you look at and I don't know their numbers, but if you had someone that could come in and give you really insight into how their cash flow was, I'm going to guess it wasn't great. We've had a lot of people that work for us that used to work for America's Homes for Rent, and they just said that years 2 and 3, when they were here, they started getting more stingy with turnovers. They were having a hard time making cash flow work for them. But the saving grace, which is always the saving grace in real estate, is their equity position.
Every mentor I have, when I ask them about their portfolio and where they're making money from, every single one says the same thing. I don't take the cash flow from my rentals, and I refinance my portfolio and live off the equity. But then I'll also hear, you can't buy groceries with equity. So that's right. You have to buy smart to get into a position where it's going to gain. And that's like when you're stuck at 2 or 3 properties. And for me, I have over 6 figures in the real estate market, no return. Like that's been over the past year, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a train that's just halted. I can't even, get cold to get the train to start going. Before we started recording, you told me that you have roughly, it was under 6 figures in the marketplace.
Yeah, we proudly can say that Scott and I have invested less than $100,000 in all of the properties that we own.
Fair. I want to figure out how to do that.
Sadly.
Yeah.
Starting in 2021, it was a little different.
Yeah, we were doing kind of the BRRRR method before BRRRR method was coined, that term.
By the time
So-
it was coined, it was kind of gone, like heading out the door.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did a lot of that. Back when we were buying a lot of duplexes, the rule of thumb was you used the cash flow from one side of the duplex to pay your mortgage.
Mm.
That was the barometer.
Love that.
Where it's the 1% rule now.
Well, the 1% rule would have been terrible. Like
Right.
that to us have been like we would demand more than that.
right.
It was the 2% rule.
Probably.
For quite some time.
We
I've heard
didn't
of
use
this.
like a metric that way. We just with duplexes, that is a metric we use. So our mortgage payment is $750. Can we get $750 aside?
Yeah.
And most of the time we can get something around that.
I'm seeing, we're on the tail end of 23, 24 where we struggled so much with the tick in interest. For the first time ever, I'm putting deal sheets together that are above the coined 1% rule where that's actually possible. Like tomorrow I'm setting up duplexes that are at 2,600 and we're going to list at like 185. And I think that it comes in part of rent rates caught up to what has happened over the past 2 years. But prior
I think
to
asset
that,
prices have cooled a little bit too.
they have cooled for sure. But I guarantee that duplex goes $25,000 over asking in December
Mm-hmm.
on a transactional down. I mean, we're down what, like 30% in the past quarter, if not more on standard transactions. I think across the United States, there's been 14% less, or this is like the lowest year in the past decade by 14%. It's insane.
We're at recessionary levels of real estate transactions.
About transactions.
Yeah.
We're at
Yeah.
the same level as 2009.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone's frozen because it's hard. I mean, you think about the houses you all live in and, the equity you have and maybe a house you want to buy. It's like, well, I'm sitting at an interest rate that's so favorable. And why would I want to buy a house and double my interest rate
Right.
and probably double your payment easily? So it's just put a chokehold on the market. It's
Yeah.
just, it's pretty remarkable what interest rates have done to our market.
It really is.
I watched new construction. They've been able to, like what I buy, I should be at an 8% interest rate, but I'm at like a 4.25
Mm.
because what they did is just inflated the price.
Yeah.
So I paid $440, but truthfully, they bought the rate down
Right.
with an astronomical amount of money. And that's why you see a lot of people transacting in new construction. But I'm so curious on that house, what will happen in the next 5 years for it to catch up to the market.
Well,
Right.
and on I do about 50% of my real estate business is retail, so owner occupants. I would say 50% of those clients, I have been able to negotiate in for them a rate buy down. If I was allowed to do that for investors, the game would be totally different.
Totally
Yeah.
different.
Right.
Which I hate that it's not allowed
Right.
for investment loans.
I mean, my friends can't buy a house. Like even with that rate buy down, it is very challenging with a standard W-2 in our marketplace to buy your first home.
Well, it's cheaper to rent than buy for the first time in Indianapolis, possibly ever.
Yeah.
Right now. And that will change. It's interest rate dependent, It
Right.
could shift.
Your son's in Tennessee, and we were talking about that, where it's like it's a struggle. He should be able to,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
just hard now.
We just did a recent podcast talking about housing affordability, and I went back and looked at just because when I bought my first house, this was in 1997. This is my primary, okay, before I was an investor. I made $9.65 an hour at my job. Okay,
I listened to this on your podcast. Keep
yeah.
going.
So my wife made around this. She made a salary, but it was essentially probably less hourly than I made. And the mindset back then was we can afford a house. Like that wasn't a problem. We didn't buy a great house. It's a nice house. It's worth many multiples now today, but it was never a thought of I can't afford a house. Well, my son makes, even with inflation adjusted, significantly more. And he's struggling to get his mind around buying a house. He lives in Knoxville, which is essentially the same city as Indianapolis, just smaller. But yeah.
Where do you think, considering all this asset price, a higher interest rate, where is the win right now?
Look, I think it depends on your frame of reference. I think a win is buying a property. I really do. I think I've got plenty of examples of mistakes, and I have air quotes going here, that we've had in the last 20 years, 24 years of buying real estate. None of them are mistakes today. Like none of them are. I think if you have the ability, again, it depends on your goal. If you're looking for real estate to replace your income, like I was, that's very hard today. Yeah. If you're looking as real estate as a part of your portfolio to invest, I think there's tons of good buys out there, because time cures all. Even if you make a mistake, time cures it all. It does.
Just hold it.
Just hold it.
Yeah.
It will always be worth more in 10 years. Yeah. I don't think I'll ever eat my words on that. Maybe will there be a time in our economy?
I don't think in the United States for the next 100 years.
And I don't think in Indianapolis for sure.
I just think we have inventory constraints that aren't going to be solved anytime soon.
Right. And that's what I wish I had a megaphone to say is like month to month, real estate is going to look like an L, but long run, decades, it's an even bigger win because the appreciation game is like strengthened. It's much stronger than it used to be in Indy.
So here's some interesting, there's a study that went out and I am starting to read through it now, and it's a property management study, but one of the takeaways was the average investor, single family investor, their financial IQ is very low.
I would agree.
Yep. So,
my clients who are listening.
And it's not a dig. It's like, there's nothing wrong with ignorance. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And as, a property management company, someone who owns a small brokerage with buyer's agents, the education has to move away, and the narrative needs to move away from cash flow. Indianapolis is not really a cash flow market anymore. It has to move into what I consider to be the biggest benefits of real estate.
Yeah.
And it is pay down and equity gain, the net.
Can I challenge something?
Yeah.
Pay down, I don't get, because I have a mortgage and I have $127,000 on it. It's a Christian Park home. I looked at monthly what the pay down, it was $124.
Yeah.
I was like, this is the hardest earned money ever, waiting for this thing to pay down.
But there's going to be times, let's say your mortgage payment's $1,000 and $124 you said goes to principal. Yep. There's going to be a time where that is your interest.
Yeah.
So but look, if you're on a 30-year AM, that's 30 years is a long time.
30 year.
Yeah. So
we're paying, I think, 200 extra, which does help because
that does help
the principal.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that's the biggest benefit of real estate is time. It's not a get rich thing. We've had big wins on the flipping side. We've had big paydays on the flipping side, but we've never, we mentioned we've had less than 100,000 into that business. We've never taken money out of our rental business ever.
And it's because of what you said. It's your interest. It becomes your interest. So in 30 years, Tyler, or if you're paying that off 200 extra bucks a month, you're probably going to pay it off in like 21 years, which at that point, that 900 and some odd dollars becomes money in Tyler's pocket as where it was going to the institution.
Well, I'll just tell
you your equity.
Yeah, I'll tell you what'll happen. I'll just predict what'll happen with Tyler.
Well, he'll sell the house next week.
Let's just say Tyler keeps this very long term. You're going to refinance into a shorter term loan. Mm-hmm. You're probably going to go down to a 20 or a 10-year loan. And because you're going to have the monthly cash flow through other businesses and things like that to support that. Mm-hmm. You're going to get a more favorable interest rate. Mm-hmm. And you're just going to it's just going to make someone's going to present you a product. You're going to be like, I want that one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to refinance that down. And
go and put these three.
And instead of 30 years now, you're all of a sudden you're on a 10-year train, and you're going to, that pay down is going to happen at a much more
Max's biggest mentors, he owns the brokerage at properties, Rex Fisher.
Yeah.
He's saying, when I got in the industry, this was 2021. Now it's 3 years later. He said, if it's in the black, buy it. If it's in a good neighborhood that's going to develop, it's in the black, which means breaking even. Mm-hmm. His whole thing was just the cash flows for making the wheels spin. That's all the point was.
Yeah.
He was like, you're betting on the neighborhood and you're betting on Indianapolis. And what better time to bet on Indianapolis with the Leap District in Lebanon, $14 billion.
Yeah.
Like, who is putting $14 million in Lebanon? I mean, and then $9 billion coming to downtown. That's actually underrepresented. It's more like 14 coming to downtown. So, I mean, all this. I think the skyline is literally changing in Indianapolis. Like,
Bob Ross is coming to paint the skyline.
And Rex always says this to us, like, people will react after they see the skyline shift,
right.
And it's too late.
Yeah.
You should be buying that 120K home in Hawville right now.
Well, I mean, have you guys driven through 16th and Capitol down to 10th?
It's crazy. That whole neighborhood.
Hey, that's my commute to Danville.
Well, yeah, the IU Health. It's
buy real estate right there, right now. You'll not regret it.
It is almost, it's almost unbelievable until you see it.
Yeah.
I mean, when you see,
It's
even when you
huge.
see it, it's like, I just can't believe the development that's going on and how much money.
Yeah.
I told a friend of mine, I was like, I feel like every person in Indianapolis could go to the doctor there and they would still absorb everybody. There's so much square footage being built. It's incredible.
Yeah. A lot of people actually make fun of it for how just fantastical that building is going to be.
Well, it's
It's like the Taj Mahal.
tons of buildings, and I can see it out my bedroom window. I can see the cranes working, and the skylight will light up at night. It's just an unbelievable project.
What is your take on midterm rentals in the Travelers game?
I honestly I'm not the person to ask. I don't have a good feel for that market. It's something that we've never explored. It could be an opportunity. Like, there's plenty of opportunities in real estate that you kind of have to say no to occasionally. And short-term and
Shiny object
midterm
syndrome.
is just something that we said no to Fountain Square many years ago. We were told, go there.
Well, Rex owns half of it, so he's had to say no.
But yeah, there was tons of houses rolling through sheriff sale.
You said
early.
no. Why?
Because I didn't like it. I didn't like the construction. And it was very anecdotal. I didn't spend much time down there. The reality
there
is,
wasn't a community down there yet.
right.
was
The
not.
reality,
It was
I just saw a
homeless.
lot of weird triplexes and things like that. And
Rex owned it.
the reality is, we had plenty of inventory to pull from in South Broad. That's where we did our.
You
did most
bought
of our
at the
business.
exact right time in South Broad Ripple. I mean, it's hard to miss in the Midtown area. It just has the recreation, the restaurants, the bars, the
It does now.
walkability.
Yeah.
It's hard to miss
46th
there.
in College was not a pleasant place to be when we were buying.
That's where I lived.
Yeah.
in 2020.
And now it's a fun place.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool stuff right there.
Right. I the saying is, like, every year the next parallel down is like the new it spot. So it used to be like, 49th was sketchy. Now 46 is sketchy.
Right.
42nd would be the next
Yeah.
logical one. And that gear seems to be shifting slower, but it always feels so slow in the moment.
It feels slow in the moment. It feels like it took forever for 46th in College to develop.
Mm.
It did. It's
Well,
like,
the Everest is 38th when we can
That is
move the needle on
Right.
38.
So much commercial zoning that when that flips, all of Indianapolis will feel a lot. 38,
Yeah.
in my opinion, no offense, I have to watch my words here, but it's kind of like dragging, literally in the middle, it's dragging the whole thing down. I think.
Mhm. Yeah,
Like,
there's a lot of
I
tough
think it's
commercial
those
right through there.
apartment complexes are tough.
Yeah.
And you own an Airbnb right there.
I do. Luckily, it's by Newfields and Butler, so we kind of get that.
So you're on the other side.
We're
More
further
west.
down. We're close to Crown Hill, but yeah,
Yeah.
we're right on the edge there.
Yeah.
I have to buy in Class C plus areas to cash flow, and I'm just hoping the lift
That's what
makes it.
I mean, look, I think you would call, 46th and Caroline. I think you would call that a C class area back in, and maybe
Oh, yeah.
maybe
I would
B,
call it a
B
B
minus.
to B minus today.
Probably B
Today.
to B minus
Yeah.
today. Yeah.
Yeah.
But as an example, 1-bedroom aside duplexes, which we own several right there, we rented them back when we bought them in 2002, most of them, we rented them for $400 a side. Now we're renting for $900 a side. So, and
It's so hard to get broaderable multifamily. I'm looking every day.
It always
for
has to.
myself for others. They're very
Yeah.
rarely, and they're always higher than you could ever
Yeah.
cash flow.
There was one opportunity when taxes were reassessed. Our city did a terrible job of property taxes for years and years and years. And finally, when the city got poor, and I think it still continued to be poor, but they just said, we need to reassess property because we're woefully underassessed. Well, duplexes got hammered. And
Investors have got hit the hardest.
they got
Taxes.
crushed, especially because they're paying 2%. So that's one time when I used to look. I had a save search Washington Township duplexes, and there was always 10 or 11. That's the number it hovered on just for years and years and years. When the taxes got reassessed, and frankly, a lot of them went through foreclosure because people couldn't afford the taxes anymore. Then it popped into the maybe 30, and I don't know what it is today if you punched in 4903, which I think that's Washington Township on the BLC side,
Yeah.
and looked at multifamily out in Miami, either B, but there's not many. It's just a hard place to buy.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Out of the rentals you have, which are you the most happy you still own?
All of them. I mean, I would say probably the more of the multifamily. When I say multifamily, I mean the duplexes, and we have a total of 3 quads that are awesome. There's a property that we own that we've never been huge fans of. And I will say, I don't know exactly the time, but I'll say 5 to 7 years ago, we decided to sell it, and we couldn't sell it. And we got down into the 300,000 range as an 8-door, two quads on the same parcel. And we couldn't sell it. So we're like, we'll just take it off the market. And now that thing is worth 3 times that much. So it's like, I am so glad we kept that property. Like I always say, the biggest regrets in real estate are the stuff you sell or didn't buy.
I can't imagine compared to what I sold on East Washington this year. That sounds like very, very similar.
Where is that one?
It's on Fall Creek.
Okay.
There's a lot of them over there. They're trading hands a lot right now.
A couple.
About $700K a pop.
Yeah.
The 4 units.
I'm about to be listing one.
Really?
Yeah. 45 Fall Creek. If you want to buy
so you were right off Meridian then.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of trading right around there. I'm not sure exactly why, but because investor we're working with, but
well, there's just a block of them right there in the
I know exactly where you are. Yeah.
That they've had them listed for a long time. Very favorable price, essentially. There's a single owner that owns 1 quad, and then there's an owner that owns everything around it, and the single owner is willing to play ball. So we'll see what happens. I guess pay attention to that side of it.
Yeah. I want to shift gears and talk about T&H for a little bit. A lot of our listeners will be thinking, oh, property manager, that's one of the hardest things to get right.
Yeah.
They make you want to pull your hair out. They have terrible communication. What, how is T&H different? And 2, what is the experience you hope investors have working with T&H?
So, going back to, I guess, my marketing differentiators, I mean, just came from a company party, and, we have most of our staff now, I think, is over 5 years with us. And we have 45 people.
That's remarkable in property management.
Yeah. It's a lot of staff. Now, part of those are remote team members, but there were probably 25 or 30 people there today. So I think not only our size, but our experience is second to none. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that comes close to us. I would say for maybe several states out even.
Wow.
I could be wrong about that. I don't know every property management company, but I know the big ones.
Here comes the hate mail.
Yeah, exactly.
PMI.
Yeah.
Coming after you.
But we have a very large staff. We have a very experienced staff. And I think that's so fundamental in property management. Honestly, there's, in sitting in my chair, I see a lot of companies come into property management. I've seen some be very successful and do a good job. I've seen a lot of people fail. It seems like to me, if you can get past that 5 to 7 year mark in property management, where and have scaled along the way, not just stayed at 100 doors or 200 doors or 300 doors or even 500 doors. But if you can continue to scale and stay in it 5 to 7 years, I would say I feel comfortable referring business to you. I don't refer business to people less than that because I just don't know that they're going to be able to make it because it's extremely hard. There's a lot of hard jobs out there, and I'm not saying property management is at the top at all, but I'm just saying it is a
thankless job.
It can be a thankless job, and that's okay. That's okay. I don't need to be told thanks. But I don't think investors and really understand the day-to-day that we go through. I think it's, you guys collect rent. That's basically it, right? And it's not. I mean, we're literally a 24/7 business. At least we make ourselves available. Certain part of our business, 24/7. Maintenance being the most of that 24/7. So there's a ton of moving parts. Housing is a very emotional thing, not only for investors, because it certainly can be emotional, but it's also for the residents that live there. It's a very emotional experience. So you have to just walk a line that where you're making sure the resident is being taken care of from a moral standpoint, but also from a statutory standpoint. There are statutory requirements that we have to fulfill or we can get in big trouble. Like today, If someone calls and doesn't have heat, it's not a question of if we get the heat going.
Yeah.
Right. It's when, and it's typically very fast.
Right.
So we can't just say, well, the owner needs a couple of months to save up money or talk to, figure out if they want to replace the furnace or not. It's not if, it's when. It has to happen. And so, yeah, it's a tough job. It's something that, is you have to have great processes for, but you also have to have people, not only that can operate the process, but they can when things get out of process, know how to get it back in. To me, that's where breakages happen, when things get out of process.
Mm-hmm.
That's when residents get upset. That's when owners get upset. That's when things can go wrong. So that's why you might have property managers, we could be one of them, that is less willing to do customizations to their processes. Mm-hmm. Because if they do, they're probably going to fail.
Well, that's the mark of a really inexperienced property manager.
It's
making exceptions for you.
It's exceptions, and it's taking on all business, because we turn down a ton of business. Because our business development manager, Jake, who I think you guys know, he knows exactly the type of property we want to manage, and he will say no. Because we can't, again, you have to say no in real estate. You have to focus on what you're really good at, which is why we've stayed away from midterm, which is why we've stayed away from short term. We know what we're good at, and we have to stay.
I just want to underscore that you have to say no to excel in real estate.
That's
a really good line.
Third person, I think, that has said that on the show already.
Really?
It's a through line we've noticed.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to, because look, real estate is this massive wonderland out there. There's so many things you can do with it. And so you have to kind of get more focused on, this is what we want to do, and develop expertise in it. Then you can make good money if you're good at it.
Yeah, walk through the high level of kind of just. I think I imagine there's a lot of people listening who are like, I wonder what it's like to work with them. What is a high level of what are the marks of your business? Let's just say in terms of percentage, fee structure, what types of units you're looking for. Just a little bit of that footprint.
We're generally a single family property manager. We do take on small multi-family buildings. We say no to on-site management. That's one thing that we're not equipped to do, and frankly don't want to spend a ton of bandwidth learning. It's just, hey, we do single family. We can do, we manage our 8-unit building. We manage some quads. We know that. We can do that. But we say no to the big multifamily buildings. We've had opportunities to manage 100-door. We could be significantly bigger if we had just chosen to do things differently. One, taking on all property, taking on more properties, taking on bigger properties, but we just have to say no a lot. So fee structure, it's typically 8% of rents collected. Our leasing team, I think there's I don't know how many people are on our leasing team anymore. 8 to 10 people in our leasing team. Leasing's big. Leasing's important. That's what our clients demand that we do a really good job of. And
it sets the tone for 12 months. It sets the tone,
yes, because it's not only getting it leased quickly, which is important. You have to place someone really qualified.
Yeah.
Yep.
And those, you can't have both necessarily. The first
person that applies usually is not the best candidate, in my experience.
In some cases they are, some cases they're just, it all depends. But you have to say no a lot there too. And that has to be done through very specific, regimented screening requirements that are published and enforced uniformly, right? You can't have, well, I feel good about that person, but I don't feel good about that person.
Having a system and process to do it.
So we charge as much as 1 month's rent to lease, because we frankly have a ton of effort that goes into our leasing, but we have caps on that. Our leasing fee. We don't, if you have a $2,000 rental, we're not going to charge you $2,000 to lease your property. And then we have we have standard renewal fees and things like that. But, we've never positioned ourselves as the cheapest. That's something that we felt was a way to lose quickly. We wanted to build a sustainable business. Our payroll is it's unbelievable, how much we have to spend on labor. That is by far and away the number one expense a property manager goes through. Especially
service-based industry.
Yeah, especially one that scales. Yeah. You can be an owner-operator and you pay yourself whatever you pay yourself, and you can be pretty lean. But as you build staff and really build expertise, you have to pay for that.
Yeah.
And wages have went up a whole lot, So it's not only that we've hired more people, it's just we're paying a lot more for people. So, and honestly, the reality is people will pay if they get better service. I mean, we take on one of our biggest lead sources is frustrated with PM.
Well, that was me. I hired someone that had a business for 2 months and just didn't understand how to run a business.
Right.
And close up shop. And I'm like, I need someone who's been in the game for a while, has experience, and has scripted policies that they don't deviate from.
You got to that place after having PM1, 2, got
you
to
were
that
my
person,
and third or fourth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't fire you guys. We just evolved into, we had an in-house employee that this was going to help pay for her, frankly.
Yeah.
Was that 8%? And I'd go back in a heartbeat because frankly, the expectations were very clear and they were followed through on. That's so key.
Yeah, I think you have to become very clear on what the client is going to get for that 8, 10%, whatever it is, the communication cadence, when we're going to notify you. There's this whole idea that real estate is passive, and I've never agreed that real estate is a passive investment. Even if you have the best property manager in the world, you're still going to be involved at a certain level.
Absolutely.
Right. So we try to make it passive. We try to take the small decisions out of the equation that we don't need your permission for. And we tell people, we're not going to come to you for these things. We're going to come to you for these things. So they know, like, I have, as a client of T&H, I have no say in who T&H places for my property. Zero. That is for a fair housing, right? Because I can't go to owners and say, hey, because we used to do this a long time ago, called them application summaries. What do you think of this person? Now, it'd be numbers only, but we let owners decide if they wanted an application or not. That was dumb. I mean, from our perspective, we were opening ourselves up to all kinds of fair housing claims.
I'm not going to name any names, but many property management companies still do that.
They still do it.
I was a little bit put off by that policy.
Yeah.
I'm put off right now learning about it. I actually was unaware.
I was like, wait, this is my investment. They're deciding for me.
Yep.
But now in hindsight, I've had numerous tenant issues. I've had tenants just pack up and leave in the middle of the lease. I've had everything you could possibly. I've had a tenant go to jail.
Paying lease on credit cards.
Paying it all on credit cards. And now I realize, like, oh, this is why it's sometimes helpful to wait the extra 3 weeks to get the quality tenant and have these script. Like, I placed someone whose credit score was in the 500s. Everything else was flawless. I interviewed them. I had this gut feeling I should place them. And it worked out, but not in the financial respect. They paid late, like every single month. Some months they're behind.
Like a 500 credit score.
Yeah, they paid like and I paid for it. Now they have a cleaning business that I supported. So you got to know why you're in real estate. Like if you're trying to be tenant first, like Addison Newell, who will be coming on this podcast, you're gonna have to deal with some different things,
totally different
late
model.
payments,
Yeah.
different model.
Yeah.
Right. He's making a different impact.
Yep.
If you want to be financial first, then you need to have policies.
Yeah. Which is having that rugged system. I think I try to flirt with both, right? I'm like, I want to be financial first, but I also want to have a heart.
Yeah.
I have a tenant right now that, I mean, I get the story, the job messed up the pay and this and that.
Yeah.
What I didn't expect as a property owner being that I'm self-managing is the phone calls of just like questions that I would personally never ask.
Yeah.
As in, my heat's not working. And they send me a picture of the heat set at 91. And I had to call them and say, you're not in your car.
Yeah.
Like the heat you'll blow the furnace up.
Yeah.
Like I had to go put a lock on the thing that you would see at a restaurant because I don't trust now that she won't click it up to 91 because it wasn't getting hot enough. It was 72.
That's so normal too.
I know. And I
that
spent
is part of the
$1,000
course.
on a tech to go
Please
out.
tell
and
me
do
they're paying their own
services.
utilities though.
Paying their own utilities. Now, that's another thing I had to learn. Like I didn't get that onboarded. So it's all those systems as a self-manager that I purposefully wanted to go through the pain before I even, implemented another person.
Because in some ways we do, and this might come off weird, but we have to protect our clients from themselves sometimes.
Oh, amen.
So like, if
being
we
at
just literally just ran every application and said, hey, do you want it?
Yeah.
Most are going to be like, yeah, when can they move in?
Right.
Right.
But they want, so
Somebody's
we
interested?
have to be like
Right.
the professionals, which we are, and why they pay us, frankly, to say, look, you know what our screening requirements are, just like our prospective residents know what our screening requirements are. It's all right on our website. It's our third most visited page we have on our website. It's our screening requirements. So you know what we're going to require. We're going to enforce this. And I'll tell you guys, in today's environment, I would be scared to death, I know you guys both do this, to screen tenants and not get scammed. There are so many rental scams out there that unless you have systems and then wherewithal and experience,
I believe that. I've been scammed.
then you're going to get scammed.
I guess I'm unaware of.
So,
I mean, I always like call the employer.
There's so many people that don't have a good credit score or have evictions that people
They
get
can-
creative.
Okay.
well, it's not only that, but it's you can jump on your phones or your computer now and Google how to make a fake pay stub.
Gotcha.
You will have paid ads come up for that.
Oh yeah.
So there
I
are
love it.
pay stubs or software out there that will replicate Lily in any employer that's around,
Interesting.
and you will not know the difference.
I wonder. Yeah, that's just interesting. I call all the employers like myself whenever I'm about to have them sign a lease.
That's good as long as you get through probably hopefully a central system where it's like, hi, this is Eli Lilly. How can I help you?
Right.
And I need this person. They transfer. So yes, that's a good way to do it. That's one hack. It's a lot more time, but you can do it that way.
Right. If you're trying to screen a ton, I always try to wait until I'm like, I know that I'm going to move forward with this one. But for me, what I've learned the hard way is I like an iPhone over 700 credit score and 3 times the rent, and I don't deviate from that because when I have deviated from it, I've paid the cost. And
What's the iPhone
You know,
reason?
iPhone, what is
You have affinity
they're
for blue?
responsive. I promise. Just try it.
Anything
Every tenant that I've evicted has had an Android, and it's a communication. They can't send good pictures, so I don't know what's going on. So then I send the wrong people out
Major
to
red
fix
flag.
things. I'm just, if you're green, I'm sorry.
Well, another thing that I've started to do, which I'm curious if you do this, Jeremy, at all, is I've started to ask for a landlord reference, and I started calling, and I've gotten really good intel from that.
really?
Or you end up talking to their uncle.
That's one thing you have to be very careful of is landlord references to me are,
Because I'll be your landlord.
because I'll
reference
say this,
there.
most professional
Maybe I'm getting duped.
companies, most professional companies now won't provide landlord references.
Interesting.
They don't want the exposure and
Fair.
potential. So look, we've talked to many landlords, again, I'm using my air quotes, that were not landlords.
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, they were great.
Yeah.
How much was their rent?
Second
I can tell you right now, I put my mom down, my wife's parents, and like my boss.
But we did a podcast on rental fraud, and I had a buddy of mine from he owns a company and that we use, and he's out in San Francisco, so he's very dialed into tech. And he had some statistics that were just, I don't remember what they were, but when I heard them, they were shocking about the number of billions of dollars fraud costs the housing industry.
I'm curious to know in the Midwest. I mean, you guys you're at 1,200 plus doors.
Yeah, between 1,200 and 1,300. Yep.
I'm shocked that in Indianapolis, like that many tenants go. I mean, yeah, you want the house and you want to be able to get the place, but we're pretty landlord friendly as far as like how we can remove tenants or move forward. It's going to cost us money. But in California, I could see all day long because you end up, there's not much landlord.
Yeah, Indianapolis is very landlord friendly. And I don't think Indianapolis investors understand exactly how good they have it.
Yeah.
Because I go to national conferences and I sit beside property managers that live in Oregon, Portland, or live in California or Colorado, Denver. And the rental, it's very difficult, and honestly, I think, look, will it happen while I'm still doing this? I doubt it, but there will be a day when Indianapolis gets much less landlord friendly. There's been pushes to already make that happen and give residents more protections, which frankly, I'm behind a lot of what they proposed. But we are such a conservative body in Indiana that it's going to be hard to get statewide regulations
So
passed.
actually, like even if something gets passed, then for it to go into effect.
We've seen
and people to
very
follow it.
what I would call, it won't cost landlords anything. It might be a little more work for landlords. Just very, I think, modest changes to landlord tenant law just get knocked down. So Indiana investors, and I'm sure investors that invest in other states know they have it good here.
Yeah. The questions that I get from out-of-state investors, sometimes I'm like, Yeah, we don't deal with any of that.
Mhm.
Well, before we wrap up, we have a couple rapid fire questions that we ask
Sure.
all of our guests. You want to kick it off, Tyler?
Absolutely. I was gonna ask. We ask for a restaurant, and usually I go brunch, but I already know, you're gonna
exactly
say
what you're
Cafe
gonna say.
Barbecue.
We go
Because
there.
every
can't-
time
I'm not
I'm
gonna let
there,
you-
I see you.
We go there.
I'm
but, yeah.
I'm gonna go. What's your favorite dinner spot in Indy?
Favorite dinner spot? I'll be biased. I love Tinker Street because I can walk right there. It's a great little.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, it's a great little restaurant. It's tiny.
Yep.
Make a
They pour you
reservation.
champagne when you
They do.
sit down
The Tinker Toast
for free.
Yep. So it's
Never been there.
It's a place that my wife and I, actually, we ate there. We made the decision to move to Heron Morton because we were looking to move, and we were looking at Meridian Kessler. We were looking at Heron Morton, kind of Old North Side. And I said, all things the same, house is the same. Where do you want to live, here or Meridian Kessler? She said, I want to live here. So that's when we kind of narrowed our focus down. And we were mostly looking for Old North Side, but we ended up just on the other side of 16th Street in Heron
I like
Morton.
that comparison of Meridian Kessler and Heron Morton.
Yeah.
I was hoping Meridian Kessler would win because I live there.
With you shared in a group that we're in that there's a metric that you have to hit and then you get to go have sushi, right? Or is this a completely different person? I thought
I
you
have
had
no
like
clue,
a-
Max.
I thought you had a like celebration metric where
No,
That's going to be someone else. We've talked to a lot of people these days.
yeah, way too many. Dang,
What's
I've given
the
you
next
credit to a sushi dinner and I'm giving it to the wrong guy. What's one habit that's changed your life?
Habit. I would say, I don't know if this is necessarily a habit. I think it's developing a reflex and the ability to care. Right. I think that's key. So I'll use this in a couple different ways. One, care about your clients. I think if you don't care about your clients and are only looking at your P&L every month, then that P&L is going to shrink, right? Especially the top side. And so I think in caring about your people, and which means to invest in them, caring that you just do good work and that you're good stewards of the properties that we manage. Also say caring about yourself. There have been times, honestly, that I wanted to be done with property management. I mean, it was hard, and I'm like, we were going through growing pains, and I think I've shared this before, but there was a time where my business partner kind of pulled me out of that and just said, we're going to be okay, because I was like, we were like at 300 doors, and I said, I just want to flip homes. Like, we were still flipping back then. I was like, I just want to flip homes because it's so much easier. I don't have to deal with anybody except for contractors.
Yeah, as managing a partner relationship with us. What are kind of the things that help keep you? Was it like, hey, go flip homes and I'll run the 300 doors at that time?
Well, that was part of how we started. He was managing our flips every day. And we started third-party property management in 2007, into 2007, mostly 2008. And I was kind of ones like, I just went out and started doing it and started building process and stuff. And then he was always there, and we met we worked together, and we ate lunch together. We ate lunch together every day, and very aware of and provided a lot of, value into building the processes and stuff. But yeah, because that was essentially running two businesses, and then flipping died, and he got more immersed into the property management, which allowed us to separate duties and scale the business, frankly. So yeah, it's worked. So.
Last question for you. What is an area of your life you're currently focused on growing?
I would say just being more intentional with my time. I think I show up to the office 5 days a week, and I don't know if that's always going to be the case for me. I think the office environment can get distracting, frankly, because there's people there, and they come and go, and the phone may ring, and your
There's
emails.
Problems calling out your name.
Yeah, you can hear problems going on. You can, whatever. And I have found myself needing time to kind of get quiet. We run EOS, and there's a thing in there that, business owners need at least monthly. I try to do them weekly. I'm not good at it. I won't try to get really good at it in 25. And that is clarity breaks, to take an hour and literally no electronics and sit with a notepad and a pen and start journaling and writing out Like, why am I doing this? Why am I here? What are my priorities? What needs to get done? Like, kind of really getting back to the vision of where our business needs to go. Because if all you're doing is responding to owner complaints or putting out fires, you're never going to be able to scale your business the right way. And it could be finding talent. It could be creating new markets we could go into, whatever it is. Not creating, but discovering new markets we could go into.
Well, as a founder, you have to have some detachment.
You have
from the
to.
day-to-day. You have to.
Yeah.
It's not an option.
It's not an option. And so that's one thing with my time. I think I just need to get more intentional of, because I found myself the last couple of weeks saying, am I doing things that are really helping us? And sometimes it's no. It's like, I don't. So it's that whole delegate and elevate thing. Like, I don't have a job anymore, guys. I really don't. Like, I don't have like, oh, Jeremy's responsible for these things. Like in terms of like day-to-day property management. I don't have none of that. I lead meetings. So maybe you could say it's that, but I don't have like, I used to do payroll. I used to do all kinds of things. I used to do bank recs. I used to do all kinds of things, but that's went away because I just had to make that space to be able to I think, get us focused and continue to grow because it's hard. It is so easy to grow a property management company from 0 to 500. It really is. It's hard to grow a property management company from 1,000 to 2,000. That's very hard because your attrition naturally every month, if you've got 1,000 doors under management, there's going to be a whole lot of them that want to sell. And so you're going to lose 10% of your portfolio probably every year, even if you're the best property manager in the country, because it's just, hey, I want to sell. I'm moving back in, whatever. I'm deciding to self-manage because I moved back in town. I'm just going to self-manage it. So you have to be, so that's what I've been working on a lot. It's just really trying to stay focused on my time to do high value things.
I love the notepad piece and taking the time off. I got to take a ton of time off. Luckily, Tyler let me escape, for the first couple of weeks with my son when he was born. And I came back and I'm like, I want every October off because I just learned so much about our company. And I feel like I probably came back and smothered a little bit because I'm like, we're changing this, this and this. And
I think, I've always, for the last several years, went to a national property management conference. And I've always used that time as a time to really, honestly, not attend events at the conference. Like, I don't need to know like best screening practices. It's like a lot of that stuff is like I call like 101 type stuff. I find the most value in seeking out people that are bigger than us and learning from them. Like sitting there, hey, let's have breakfast. Let's have a coffee. Let's have lunch together and really picking their brains. And then it allows you to see your business at a different level because you're hundreds of miles away from it, literally, physically. That has an effect on you a little bit, I think. And I'm excited because Scott's going to join me this year in Colorado Springs. We're going to both go out to a conference, and I think it's going to be a fun time for us to both learn about how we can grow and do better work.
Yeah, that's super cool. Well, before we let you out, where can people find you, or where do you want people to find you?
They're just T&H Realty Services, and we'll be there. It's the easiest way to find us. They can email me directly. I love hearing from investors, stories. Jeremy at threaltyinc.com. It's not the Realty Inc. It's not TH Reality Inc. It's threaltyinc.com. So
I love it. And Jeremy has his own podcast, the Indy REI podcast. A lot of good discussions on there with other Indianapolis folks. So
yeah. It's one of the fun things I do, frankly, is to meet people, get out of the office. Yeah. And I've had a lot of fun doing it. Yeah. And the most gratifying, one of the things we signed up a fairly not huge, but a decent sized portfolio. And it said, how did you hear about T&H podcast? That was a lot of gratification that says, because I don't necessarily do it for lead gen. I do it more for just meeting people and telling great stories.
It builds trust too with clients. I think.
Yeah, but it's great to see that we actually get business from it. That's kind of fun.
That's awesome. Hopefully we'll start getting business from this. Well, that's been another Roots episode. If you want to see Jeremy in person, he's going to be at our next Masterclass. This episode will come out late February, and that event will be March 6th. So We
around the corner.
Can't wait to have you on our panel there where, live audience can learn more. So drop a like, subscribe, turn on the bell, do all those YouTube-y things, and we'll see you next time. Peace.